Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out Blister in the Sun, Violent Femmes, and the band Out of Time.
Sometimes it takes a while for a band to find their audience. Maybe their sound isn't quite refined. Perhaps their debut doesn't quite connect. Could be that their hometown crowd aren't quite receptive. For Violent Femmes, right out of the gate, their debut was a perfect encapsulation of who they were. Snaking bass lines, minimalist drums, scrappy acoustic guitar, and frontman Gordon Gano's snottily yelped teenage desperation. But in 1983, it wasn't a hit. They were a 90s band trapped in the wrong decade. Folk and punk in equal measure, this is the story of the Violent Femmes' self-titled debut.
Wow. I've definitely heard Blister in the Sun. For sure. Haven't we all? That opening guitar riff is one of the very first things a young guitar player learns these days. I think, isn't it? It was for me. She can figure it out. It's easy. And I love this guy's voice. I didn't know what his name was. Gordon Gano. When I first heard this song, or the first several times I heard Blister in the Sun, I thought it was a woman. It's kind of an androgynous voice, and I like that. There's something about it. Makes it seem like it's coming from an alien, or a ghost, or something other than a human being. A genderless entity. But what a great song. They do seem so 90s. I guess I thought they were started in the 90s. They do seem very 90s. I guess they were in the 80s. 83? Look at that. He's even wearing a flannel. 90s Seattle flannel, y'all. In 80, maybe this is in the 90s. I don't know when this was done, but this particular, oh no, Milwaukee at 12, 1983. They're 10 years ahead of their time, at least.
They were a 90s band.
Y'all be sure to go to Trash Theory and like and subscribe. Okay, the origins of Violent Femmes, 1981 to 82. The rhomboids, bathrobes, and pretenders. Gimme the car, Violent Femmes.
Formed in Milwaukee in 1981, Violent Femmes had a less than standard origin. Bassist Brian Ritchie and drummer Victor De Lorenzo had assembled a rhythm section for hire, playing in and around Milwaukee in bands with names like the Rhomboids, Hitler's Missing Testy, and Trance and Dance. Despite
Hitler's Missing Testy. It's a great name. We found it. We found a missing testy.
Names like the Rhomboids, Hitler's Missing Testy, and Trance and Dance. Despite this, 21-year-old Ritchie had an assorted background in big band, jazz, neo-psychedelia, and punk.
He's playing an acoustic bass too. That you don't see that often, especially live.
And an assorted background in big band, jazz, neo-psychedelia, and punk. De Lorenzo, 6 years older, had studied under a contemporary of Buddy Rich. As such, they could lend themselves to pretty much any sound. Gordon Gano was still in high school. He was what can be described as a character. He liked sport, but was a devout churchgoer. He would come to school on a Monday with a bathrobe over his clothes, as if to visually imply a sentiment of, I got up for this. In essence, a short, weird kid, who would have been beaten up more if he wasn't so charismatic. But in addition to this, he'd also been writing songs on his acoustic guitar and playing them sporadically in coffee shops around town. He'd grown up listening to the Carter Family, Johnny Cash, and Bob Dylan.
And the circle be unbroken by and the Lord.
So I laughed in his face and I spit in his eye. With 18 minutes, there must be some way out of here. Said the joker to the thief.
That was until, at the age of 15, an older brother had taken him to a Heartbreakers show. His songs reflected this collision of lyrical folk and country, and the frenzy of New York punk. Ritchie was made aware of Gano via a friend, who called him a pint-sized Lou Reed. Some months later, Gano recruited the Rhythm Combo to back him for a school assembly, a performance to celebrate him being inducted into the National Honor Society.
Okay, I've never heard of a band getting together that way. So the drummer and bassist were a rhythm section for hire. He hires them for a performance to celebrate him being inducted into the National Honor Society. I was in the National Honor Society. No one cared. I think I got a piece of paper. We didn't have a show. There was nothing. Nothing. I could have put on a show, y'all. I'm going to go back to my high school, hire a rhythm section, and play some song. That's what I'm doing, y'all.
Without much of a rehearsal, and as an act of defiance and reference to Elvis Costello's similar SNL bait and switch, Gano replaced the agreed upon good friend for the more provocative Gimme the Car.
I ain't no runt. Come on, girl, give me your...
The phantom rhyme provoked the crowd to near riot, with the faculty trying unsuccessfully to halt the performance. Safe to say that Gano was never inducted into the National Honor Society. In its place, Violent Femmes.
So because of that performance, they decided not to induct him into the National Honor Society? Is that real? Huh. I had a similar experience in high school. I was in a band playing the guitar. We played in a talent show at the high school. And I brought a guitar amp and I cranked it as loud as it would go because there was no PA. There was a vocal microphone, but everything else was just acoustic, like to fill up this whole room. So I cranked my guitar amp. And I remember at the rehearsal, my Spanish teacher was at the front of the stage like the guitar amp was so loud to her. She couldn't she was trying to turn it down. She was like walking up to it and like, and I was just sitting there going, it was so fun. What song did they switch to? To Gimme the Car. Okay, let's read the lyrics. Come on, Dad, give me the car tonight. Come on, Dad, give me the car tonight. I got this girl I wanna. Come on, Dad, give me the car tonight. Okay, that's funny. Come on, Dad, give me the car tonight. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick her up hot. I'm going to get her D word. I'm going to make her cry. I'm going to get her H word. I'm going to make her laugh. I'm going to make her shh. Woman, shh. I know she's it because I'm going to... Okay. I bet a lot of these high school boys could relate very specifically to this song. And that's what calls it riot. A connection with truth.
The phantom rhyme provoked the crowd to near riot, with the faculty trying unsuccessfully to halt the performance. Safe to say that Gano was never inducted into the National Honor Society. In its place,
come on,
Violent Femmes.
You're going to tell me how you got the name Violent Femmes.
Well, when I was growing up on the west side of Milwaukee, we called a sissy or a wimp. Well, you know, sort of like you were when you were a kid, Howard.
I never was a sissy or a wimp.
I know, I'm just kidding. But that's what we call a femme.
I never knew a sissy or a wimp.
Of course, violent is the opposite of that, so it's just a contradiction.
Violent Femmes was supposed to be a temporary arrangement. Richie and DeLorenzo, sick of the Milwaukee scene, planned to move to Minneapolis to join another band in autumn 1981. It didn't help that their hometown rock clubs were not welcoming of their mutant folk punk jazz sound, and so they rarely booked gigs. Richie struck upon a left field solution. If the clubs didn't want them, they'd just play wherever. They play on the street. The mechanics of playing outdoors and unamplified recalibrated their sound. Gano remained with his acoustic. Richie wielded a massive mariachi bass.
That's
and
huge.
DeLorenzo created what he called the trancephone, a floor tom with a metal bucket on top, mounted on a snare stand, which he would then play with brushes. The setup was consciously similar to the one Gene Vincent and his Blue Caps used.
Yeah, with that setup, you could pretty much play anywhere. On the sidewalk. Outside. That's a great idea, y'all. Buskin'.
Well, she's the gal in the red blue jeans.
It also served as a
That's a
counter
good
to
song.
the other rock music of the time, loud and overproduced. This was like a reverse Like a Rolling Stone moment for punk. Gano's lyrics weren't overshadowed by distorted guitars and booming drums.
Right.
The lyrics were now the focus.
Special favors come in 31 flavors. We're out of mint, pass a lifesaver.
And busking was getting them noticed. In August 1981, outside the Oriental Theatre, they were playing to the punters waiting to go inside. One of the people that had stopped and watched commented in an English accent that they reminded him of the Stray Cats.
Oh, yeah. the drummer situation is similar.
But that the Femmes were better. It turned out to be James Honeyman Scott of the Pretenders.
Him, okay. Good drummer.
He went back into the theatre, grabbed the rest of the band, and brought them out to listen. We played about 4 songs, the last one being Girl Trouble, with the incredibly catchy refrain. We're singing this and Chrissy Hind is just cracking up. She can't believe it. So after we get done, she says, "Do you want a gig tonight?"
What? Whoa. Okay. They're playing on the sidewalk. The drummer for the Pretenders comes out, sees them playing. He's like, this is great. You remind me of the Stray Cats because of the drum set, probably. He's a drummer. That's what he's focused on. The Stray Cats drummer did a similar thing. He stands up and plays. He goes into the theater. These guys are probably doing a sound check for the show that night. It's like, yo, come out here and listen to this band on the sidewalk. And they love it. Do you want a gig tonight? Wow.
So
What'd
in
they
between the support and the Pretenders, Violent Femmes played 4 songs to a hostile crowd that started booing them the minute they walked on stage.
Why?
But Richie and DeLorenzo never ended up going to Minneapolis. The fact that professional musicians appreciated what they were doing urged them to continue on,
Yeah.
eventually getting some more inside gigs. What really broke the band was a year later when they played New York supporting Richard Hell. The New York Times' Robert Palmer devoted a single paragraph to the headliner, and the rest of his review raving about the Milwaukee three-piece. Wow. The sound that results from this unlikely concatenation echoes all sorts of antecedents, from skiffle music to Dylan, to early Velvet Underground, to Jonathan Richman, to punk rock without the amplification. But most of all, the sound is genuinely new. If the major record labels were less financially strapped and more adventurous, this young and extraordinarily talented band would be some artist development department's dream come true.
Yeah. If I was Chrissy Hind, I wouldn't say, do you guys want a gig tonight? I would say, do you want a record deal? Let me be your manager, right? I think a lot of it is the voice too. It's the songwriting and his voice. There's just something really convincing about his voice. It sounds like it's connected to his soul, or it sounds like he knows what he's doing, like it's effortless.
The buzz generated by this review got the band signed by Premier Indie Slash,
Alright.
with the grand total of f*** all. But it was perfect timing. The month prior, the Femmes had self-funded the recording of their debut album, and Slash were the only label willing to release this acoustic punk oddity as is.
Okay. Violent Femmes' self-titled debut, 1982 to 83, Frustration, Isolation, and Blister in the Sun. Blister in the Sun, Violent Femmes.
As Victor DeLorenzo was the oldest member of the band, he took it upon himself to fund the album, accruing merely several handfuls of spare change from busking. He went to his father, who lent them $10,000. In July 1982, they entered Shade Tree Recording by Lake Geneva, situated inside a hotel of a Playboy resort.
I'm sorry, what studio? Shade Tree Recording. Let's check that out. I bet it's not there anymore. Show me your number. Lake Geneva. There's a lot of lakes around there. I didn't realize that. Okay. Shade Tree. Oh. Black Circle Records. There's that. Oh. It's a record shop. That's cool though. Record shop still going? Okay. I guess that studio's gone. Moving on.
By Lake Geneva, situated inside a hotel of a Playboy resort. But the process of recording was constantly disrupted, as the studio was in the process of being sold. Each new session, another piece of gear was missing. We later found out that the studio was going bust, hence the gear being sold. And the engineer was in fact the janitor. He's got to be the only janitor with a platinum record to his credit.
Oh my god. I don't know if that's true. A lot of engineers start out as janitors at the recording studio. I did. I have some platinum records, so...
18 at the time of recording, the songs had been written by Gano throughout his teen years, and so were caked in teenage frustration, isolation, and alienation. On Kiss Off, he feels so very much that no one around him truly understands him.
I need someone, a person to talk to, someone who care to love. Could it be you?
Leading to depression in his infamous pill-taking bridge.
I take one, cause you left me, and two for my family.
Please Do Not Go dwells on an unrequited crush.
But then she like another guy.
With little chance of reciprocation.
I fall down dead, she never see the tears I cry.
While Prove My Love continues this theme, with increased desperation and bargaining.
What do I have to do? And prove my love to you.
The most unsettling expression of teenage male id is the sweaty 6-minute maelstrom, Add It Up. Formed around the hormonal compulsion, the single-minded objective of losing one's virginity.
Why can't I get just one screw? Why can't I get
Oh, I've heard this one.
And Gano's protagonist, not having much luck in that regard.
Believe me, I know what to do, but something won't let me make love to you.
The song burns with anger, becoming a quest for the protagonist to get something he feels he is entitled to.
I get angry, and I will sing.
And is enraged that so far he has been denied. The song's title refers to a sex worker counting the assorted coinage once his objective had been achieved.
Oh.
Wait a minute, honey, I'm gonna add it up. Add it up, add it up.
One late
Right.
verses metaphor comparing the protagonist's manhood to a firearm has taken on an increasingly queasy association in the aftermath of real-life events. Too many sexless murderers, radicalized by misogynistic commentators.
Don't shoot that thing at me. Don't shoot that thing at me.
But Gano had no homicidal inclination. He was just trying to work dark thoughts and feelings out through fiction. Written with a knowing humour, for the most part his words remain diaristic, instead of something you might find in a manifesto.
Words to memorize, words hypnotize, words make my mouth exercise.
A lot of it was just having to do with some outlet. Like, if I didn't write a song that I felt really good about every couple of days, I'd really feel out of sorts.
Really?
So it was a way of letting out frustrations and feeling like I was doing something that was constructive, or good, or something I could use one day. A lot of the feeling, I guess, came from like when people write blues songs. Writing something, then singing about it, and it feels better. The music itself suited the awkwardness of its themes, constructed of their unique, feral acoustic punk. Their guitars taking a back seat to Ritchie's relentless, propulsive bass avalanches.
Wow.
But their
Yeah. With bass parts like that, you don't need much else besides the drums and the vocal and the guitar, right? It's an impressive bass player. I didn't expect that.
But their influences poke through. Prove My Love inverts a songwriting conceit from the Ramones, Judy is a Punk.
Third verse, same as the first. Just last night I was reminded of.
The xylophone-spirited Gone Daddy Gone steals a whole verse from the Willie Dixon blues standard, I Just Wanna
yeah.
Make Love to You.
Tell by the way that you switch and walk.
I can see by the way you baby talk.
I can see by the way that you baby talk. I can know by the way that you treat your man.
And the same kind of romantic frustration atop rudimentary instrumentation that pervades the album is similarly found in the work of Jonathan Richman.
Girls could not resist the stare. Pablo Picasso never got called an asshole.
Though the album is full of first-hand adolescent insecurity, its fidgety opener, Blister in the Sun, was intended for someone else to sing.
Really?
Blister in the Sun was actually written for a woman I'd met at a poetry reading. She wanted to form a band like the Plasmatics. And maybe I'd play guitar, and I wanted a song I could offer. But the rehearsal got cancelled, and I never heard from her again.
Oh.
I hear she joined a cult and moved to Canada. The references to big hands were an inversion of love song tradition, men singing about objects of affection, emphasizing their small features. It was also another chance to show Gano's insecurity. Being 5'2", he lacked what he felt women were attracted to.
5'2". Wow. Wow. I'm realizing now I've heard more of their songs than I thought. I've heard Add It Up, and I've heard Gone Daddy Gone. Gone Daddy Gone. Yes, it's gone. Yeah, I've heard that.
Emphasizing their small features. It was also another chance to show Gano's insecurity. Being 5'2", he lacked what he felt women were attracted to. The lyrics, for the most part, were a stream of consciousness, a collection of phrases that sounded good. But together they formed a picture in listeners' minds that completely eluded its writer.
Body and beats, I stain my sheets, I don't even know why.
Sometime in the 90s, years after the song had been out, I was talking to somebody that I had just met, and they were talking about the song, and eventually said, "Well, you know what the song is about. You wrote it." I was like, "What do you mean?" They were like, "Oh, come on, you know what it's about." And I said again, "What are you talking about?" They wouldn't say. But then finally they were like, "Well, the song is about masturbation."
That's what I thought.
And that was the first time I had ever heard that. Now
Really?
I have come to the realization there's a large percentage of people who think that about the song.
Me?
But I had never thought of that.
Really? Okay.
One other theory is that the song is about heroin addiction, with certain phrases sparking that association.
Then I'm so strung out.
Yeah.
High as a kite, I just might.
Gano has confirmed that the line about staining sheets is about wet dreams. His sexual frustration ready to pop like the titular metaphor.
Let me go on, like I blister in the sun.
The girlfriend crying is less certain. Perhaps his nightly...
Like I blister in the sun. I thought it was like a blister in the sun. And it's not about masturbation.
I blister in the sun.
The girlfriend crying is less certain. Perhaps his nightly expulsions are causing her to feel he is resorting to his subconsciousness for satisfaction, rather than reality and her.
My girlfriend, she's at the end, she is starting to cry.
Either way, it makes sense that Ritchie claims that Gano's best songs were written when he was a virgin. Though a fan favourite and the song college radio would latch upon, Blister in the Sun was not the album's lone single, Slash pushing Gone Daddy Gone instead.
Gone, daddy, gone, love is gone, it's gone, daddy, gone, love is gone, it's...
The album, self-titled, was released in April 1983, but sales were unimpressive, despite the UK press briefly hailing the band as the future of rock and roll. Their infiltration of popular culture would take another decade to truly take hold.
That's crazy. Yeah, I can't believe that was 83. That's like, wow. Okay, wow. The follow-up, Hallowed Ground, 1982 to 84, Death, Religion, and Betrayal. Country death song, Violent Femmes.
The Femmes followed up their self-titled debut a little over a year later,
That's an album cover.
with May 1984's Hallowed Ground. The reason for the quick turnaround was that they had already been playing most of album 2 before recording their first. Gano seemed to have a lot of feelings to sing out. Where their debut had been more of a rock album, Hallowed Ground was more eclectic, taking in country, gospel and Christian themes, less horny and more death-obsessed and God-fearing. For example, Country Death Song was written as a school creative writing experiment,
Guaranteed to get your own place in hell.
embodying the macabre murder ballads of old.
Take your lovely daughter and throw her in the well.
The title track begins with a reading from the book of Hosea,
The prophet is a fool. The spiritual man is mad.
chapter 9, verse 7.
For the multitude of thine iniquity and the great hatred.
And Jesus walking on the water is a surprisingly straight-faced Sunday school hoedown.
Jesus walking on the water. Jesus walking.
The UK press thought it was satire, bad on purpose, and applauded their subversiveness. But Gano was just expressing his faith, his Baptist upbringing with a preacher father. I don't write those kinds of songs as an exercise, or because I like the general spirit of gospel music, but because of sincere feelings coming from myself. It means something to me. It's important in my life, and it comes out in songs. His God-forward songs had proved a sticking point within the band when recording their first album. Though not that way inclined, DiLorenzo enjoyed the theatrical aspect, but Ritchie vetoed their original inclusion due to his devout atheism. What changed his mind was how much these Christ-aligned country songs were pissing off audiences. As their work up to this point had shown, Ritchie was a believer in punk as an attitude, rather than a sound. In a similar way to the Replacements weaponizing shambolic pop covers, the Femmes were enacting the ultimate subversion by playing the exact opposite of what their crowds were expecting. Unsurprisingly, much of the goodwill they had earned from their fanbase was exhausted by this unpredictability. Though overall perhaps a more solid album than their debut, Hallowed Ground sold worse, in part because Slash simply wanted their debut again, and were unsatisfied with what they had been given. Slash didn't promote it in any way. Sometime afterwards we were told it was a deliberate choice to do absolutely nothing for Hallowed Ground, because they wanted to teach us a lesson. They wanted to make sure it'd be a failure.
Wow. What a tangled web we weave in the music industry. That's interesting. The first album's more about sexual frustration, and the second one's more spiritual. It's very different. So I see what the record label means. Like, we want that same thing again. I was not expecting him to be a Christian. Like, the attitude he has on that first album seems like it would make him anti-religion, but I guess, or it seems like it would make him more of an atheist, basically. Interesting. Okay. The Legacy of Violent Femmes, 1984, alt rock influence, and Sabrina the Teenage Witch? Okay. American music, Violent Femmes.
American music.
As the 80s progressed, Violent Femmes released another couple of albums. Their Jerry Harrison produced The Blind Leading the Naked in 1986, and their confusingly titled fourth album, Free, in 1989, neither of which set the world on fire. However, in the background, their debut continued to sell. By 1991, nearly a decade after release, it became one of the few albums to have gone platinum in the US, without ever having charted on the Billboard 200.
Oh, interesting.
It appeared on the chart for the first time that same year, peaking at number 171. College radio and word of mouth kept these songs alive. Teenagers forever able to relate to Gano's adolescent dissatisfaction. Somebody told me once, if you haven't heard of the band before college, you will hear about Violent Femmes when you go to college.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be playing it in the dorm or at a party.
Yeah.
I've heard many times that older brothers and sisters got their younger brothers and sisters listening to it. I think that that's been a big part of our career, is having these other generations that have found out about our music. By the turn of the 90s and the thrust of alternative rock into the mainstream, Violent Femmes have finally found their audience. Teenage angst was starting to pay off well, and the Femmes were being held up as pioneers, alongside R.E.M., Husker Du, The Replacements, and Sonic Youth. In 1991, they even managed to score a modern rock number 2 hit with American Music.
I've never heard
Gano's
that.
awkward desperation seeped into a generation of dorky, heart-on-sleeve rockers, while his quirky, impassioned, but irregular vocal style can be heard throughout the spectrum of indie rock.
Does sound like it. Wrestle with Jimmy.
The sun, it is past, now it's blacker than black. I took my shirt off in the yard. Well, wet dream, magazine, fantasies, and make-believe. And I will remember that summer.
Do you know where the muffins go? They go along to take your honey.
Their debut also was, alongside the Pogues, Billy Bragg and Meat Puppets, an essential building block in the creation of folk punk. What is Against Me's reinventing Axl Rose album, if not a thrilling, politicized take on the Femmes?
I
Furthermore, Hallowed Ground predated what became known as alt country or Americana, with Ritchie theorizing they set the blueprint for this ragged gospel roots punk sound.
I changed the kind of car I drive, so you can't see me when I go.
I'm going where there's no depression, to a better land.
Got a landmine in my bloodline. I'm not immune to get blown apart. Don't like riding on the passenger side.
But really, anyone who had been aware of college radio in the 80s has a soft spot for the Violent Femmes. I was a replacements freak, but the Violent Femmes made more important art. They had an almost drunken sensibility, but you knew they were deadly serious about music. They were just a trio, but they were alluding to a much bigger sound with only a few elements. Continuing their acceptance in the 90s, Violent Femmes also had their fair share of film and TV appearances. Blister in the Sun was used in the John Cusack Assassin Goes to His High School Reunion movie, Gross Point Blank.
I haven't seen that one.
In Reality Bites, Ethan Hawke's character proves why he was the wrong choice by pointedly performing Add It Up at Winona Ryder.
Why can't I get just one screw? Why can't I get just one screw? Believe me, I know what to do.
And the band even had an entire episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch revolve around them.
I'd love to meet the Violent Femmes. When? Where?
You're going to see the Violent Femmes? You have to let me come with you. I will do anything to meet Gordon Gano.
You're going to see the Violent Femmes? Can I come too?
What's the name of the band again?
The Violent Femmes. Which is completely ironic because there aren't even any femmes in the band, let alone violent ones.
Sabrina and her friends go to a late-night record store signing.
Oh, they're
Magic
there.
and hilarity ensue.
Oh.
Half-hour infatuation spell ought to work.
Wow! You're fantastic!
Only it wasn't supposed to be the Femmes. We were a late substitution. The whole thing had been planned for somebody probably that you would think would make more sense. Or you wouldn't go, that was very strange.
Can I play a song for you, Libby Chesler?
If you like.
Guys, let's do Please Do Not Go.
And they already had the whole script. They had everything done. But whoever the artist or band was, they had to cancel.
Tell your mind I'm stuck in this lovely girl.
Maybe whoever had been planned to do it might have made more sense. I mean, it couldn't have made less sense.
I wrote that for you even before I knew you existed.
I thought so.
But this willingness to lend out the Violent Femmes music would be their downfall. De Lorenzo had already left in 1983 due to continued disagreements within the band. 5 albums of varying quality peppered the 90s before in 2009 the Femmes broke up. The reason was Gano had licensed Blister in the Sun to the fast food chain Wendy's a couple years earlier.
Because Wendy's chili is simmered on a stove and made
that
with
money.
care, and baked potatoes are pulled from the oven.
Ritchie was appalled and sued his bandmate for belated songwriting royalties. The majority of their songs credited solely to Gano. When you see dubious, or in this case disgusting uses of our music, you can thank the greed, insensitivity and poor taste of Gordon Gano. It is his karma that he lost his songwriting ability many years ago, probably due to his own lack of self-respect, as his willingness to prostitute our songs demonstrates.
Damn, y'all. That sucks. So I guess Brian didn't get any songwriting credit. I wonder if he did. It's best he gave all the band members songwriting credit if you want the band to stay together.
But they wouldn't be gone for long. The original three-piece would briefly return to play Coachella in 2013, in part celebrating the 30th anniversary of their debut. De Lorenzo left again soon after. Since then, the band have released another couple of albums. But few would argue with their debut as being their defining moment. Back then, Violent Femmes sound set them apart from their contemporaries. Before, they were freaks. But this eccentricity made them stand the test of time. With other albums released the same year, their synths and massive drum production feel trapped in 1983. However, Blister in the Sun, Gone Daddy Gone, and Kiss Off sound as fresh today as when the album was released. And partly this is because self-loathing and sexual frustration will always be universal painful themes that teenagers of any generation can cling to. It especially made sense within the mainstreaming of alternative rock in the 90s. It was embarrassingly honest music, about what can be the most confusing time of your life. Violent Femmes' awkward songs will always be the perfect soundtrack for those awkward years.
Wow, yeah. They kind of remind me of Weezer a little bit. I think when Weezer first started, the plan was to have an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar going in every song. The guy who played the acoustic guitar left the band. They got another guitar player who played electric, so it became more of a traditional rock four-piece. Also, the Weezer album Pinkerton reflects a lot about sexual frustration and kind of that adolescent feeling that Blister in the Sun and their first album dealt with. Very Weezery. Interesting.
Thanks for watching. So what other bands do you think sound unlike the decade they're from? Comment down below. If you like this video, like, subscribe, and why don't you also do me a favor and share it with a couple of people.
Y'all be sure to go to Trash Theory and like and subscribe. That's really interesting. They're from Milwaukee? Man, that's gotta be some pretty weird ego stuff to deal with if your first album is your best selling album and everything you try to do after that just doesn't quite reach it sales wise. You gotta hand it to them for sticking to their guns and writing songs that were reflecting what they were going through at the time instead of doing the teenage angst thing over and over and over and over again. Still can't believe they're from the early 80s. That's so crazy. Man, I want to hear that album now. Show me your nipple. There they are. I guess there's 4 of them now. Blister in the Song, Added Up, Gone Daddy Gone. There's a deluxe version of their first album. Oh, a lot of live tracks. That's cool. Oh, got some demos on here too. That's cool. Blister in the Sun demo. The demos actually sound pretty good. Glad to see they're still rocking. What a choice, too. So creative. Well, I'd like to thank my patrons. I'd like to thank my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Thank y'all for watching this with me, and I'll see you next time. Later.